welcome to another episode of I Want to Know, the show dedicated to our government, people involved in our government, and how our government works. I'm honored today to once again have Senator Christine Cohen, who serves the 12th District, which is Brantford, North Brantford, Durham, Guilford, Killingworth, and Madison, which is roughly 100,000 residents, correct?
Correct.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm interviewing as many candidates as possible. As you know, this is your second election cycle, and wow, what a difference 2 years makes.
Yeah.
So real briefly, people know you by now, hopefully, but why don't you just go into yourself briefly, your history, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, thanks first off for having me. I'm thrilled to be back. I always love doing the show with you. So it's great to be here, albeit virtually, but wonderful to be a part of it. And so I'm Christine Cohen, as you said. I'm the 12th District Senator representing the shoreline and just north. And it has been a wonderful couple of years. I will, as you said, just mention briefly a little bit about my background. Born in New York, just over the border, Westchester County, spent a good portion of my young years over there, and then moved to Fairfield County, Connecticut, when I was 11, and graduated from Ridgefield High School there. I went to school at Western Connecticut State University, did some of my MBA work at UConn, so I am all about Connecticut. Yay, Connecticut. Woo! Yeah. Met my husband. He also is a Ridgefield High School graduate. So we are high school sweethearts of sorts, been together for a great many of years. I won't go into that. But we have three beautiful children, Aiden, Ashlyn, and Ryan, who are 15, 13, and 10 respectively. And we live in Guilford with our family. Also had lived in Madison at one point, where we started our business, Cohen's Bagel Company, in 2003. Prior to starting our own business, I worked for Fortune 500 companies and in consumer products. I have a business background, a business degree, specialized in marketing. So I was a marketing manager immediately before opening our own business, and stayed on as such at Stanley Black & Decker for many years. So that's a little bit about my background. In terms of public service, I was elected to the Guilford Board of Education prior to my run for state senate. And, when Ted Kennedy Jr. decided not to run for state senate again in 2018, that's when I decided to make a run for it. And so grateful, honored every day to be able to serve this absolutely beautiful district that we live in, and just feel so fortunate to be able to live here and serve the people.
Back in the good old days prior to COVID, there were a lot of issues the state was dealing with, taxes, tolls, infrastructure. And then, we've been saddled, the globe has been saddled with the pandemic, and everything has been put on the shelf. If you could tell us a little bit about how that's been during the pandemic.
Well, I will tell you, it's really been busy, a very different kind of busy. People say, oh, well, your legislative session got cut short, which is absolutely true. But I don't think we've ever, I spoke to many of my colleagues who have been in the legislature for a great number of years, who all have expressed the same thing, that constituent services have never been in such need, in such great demand. People ask about what is the single most pressing issue facing the state. Well, it's the pandemic.
They all are.
Yeah, I know. It's facing Connecticut, it's facing the United States, it's facing the globe. And right now it's, how do we ensure public health and safety during the coronavirus? Because every aspect of our lives, social interactions, education, business operations, elections, sporting events, everything just continues to be adversely impacted as we contend with this deadly ongoing virus. all of those things take time, and people are rightfully concerned. We've got businesses who are unsure what their future holds, folks who are out of work, in many cases for the first time, collecting unemployment insurance, and that has been, I'd say, the first few months of the pandemic in particular, it was constant Department of Labor questions. How do I get my unemployment insurance? And, getting folks up and running who were used to having a regular paycheck and suddenly found themselves without. And how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to, what's my next step? What's my next job? There just wasn't any certainty. Now I feel like we're slowly finding our footing, where we know what the safety protocols are. We've been, I think the governor has done a fantastic job of managing, the unknown with this pandemic, and really has instilled in the people of Connecticut the importance of safety guidance, wearing the masks, washing our hands, maintaining social distance. And it's because of his swift reaction, to the right types of business closures, the right types of communication with respect to the health and safety of the people of Connecticut, that we were able to, hit a peak very early on and then get that under control. And I think now, as we head into these cooler months, we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick, but our infection rate is still much lower than that of other states. We've really become a model state of sorts. And because it's low enough, we are able to employ the, social, the contact tracing that needs to be done, and really work to ensure that the spread of this virus is mitigated until such time that there's a vaccine or a really good treatment that keeps people from dying.
Right. To the governor's credit and to everybody's credit up in Hartford, our infection rate, we're, the top 3 lowest states in the nation right now,
right,
as far as infection rates are concerned.
Yeah.
And that, that means that, nobody would want to close a business down or, have to enforce what we have to enforce. But, if it's keeping people healthy, it's allowing business to stay operating to the extent it is.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, one thing is, it's this week that we're going into phase 3 of reopening. And
what does that mean?
Well, what that means is restaurants who are currently at 50% capacity now have the ability to go to 75% capacity. Outdoor meetings, we now can go to 150.
Okay.
Outdoor venues like amphitheaters and racetracks, things of that nature, are now able to have patrons on a limited basis. The arts who have been so impacted, to such a great degree, haven't even been able to open up their doors, will now be able to open up their doors at 50% capacity. So we're making progress. I know I've missed some of the guidelines there on phase 3 reopening, but you can find those online. But it makes a huge difference, as these businesses, as we say, have really been struggling to keep their workers employed and to keep their doors open while paying for the overhead that really hasn't changed for them, in terms of rent and those fixed costs that they have. Hopefully this will alleviate some of the burdens that they're feeling as we move forward. But again, we have to maintain those safety precautions to make sure that we can stick with it.
How has campaigning differed this cycle versus the last cycle? And what kind of challenges does that present?
Yeah, well, I'm somebody that loves the doors, being on the doors, going door to door.
You both. I love it.
Yeah, talking to people. That's what this is all about. That's why I'm in this. I really wanted to become the state senator because I wanted to take people's voices to Hartford, and really feel heard. And you do that by interacting with people and understand where they're coming from and what they'd like to see, what they'd like to see more of, what they'd like to see less of. And we just haven't been able to do that. It's not an appropriate time to really be on people's doorsteps,
Right.
Talking face to face. So that's been very different. By now we would have done thousands and thousands of doors. And so we're just going about things a little bit differently, perhaps doing a literature drop on the door rather than putting people in an uncomfortable position of, not sure if they want to answer it, things of that nature. We're doing, calls and texting, things just like we're doing here. We've gotten creative virtually.
Right.
Campaigns have gotten really creative from a virtual standpoint. And so I think, you'll see more of that.
A lot of social media, for better or for worse.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So the past 2 years, you've served on some committees, obviously. You're the chair of the Environmental Committee, correct?
That's right.
Vice chair of the Commerce Committee and member of the Children Planning and Development Committees.
Yep.
Would you like to speak a little bit about the legislation that has come out of your committees and been enacted into law?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we had, despite, this session being cut short,
Right.
and we've had some, COVID really sort of abbreviated our work in the session. We have gotten a tremendous amount of work done. On the Environment Committee, which I am the Senate chair of, we were able to pass a plastic bag ban, pass a toxic waste dumping ban. Plastic bags will be officially banned mid-year in 2021. That's really exciting.
People were like, not to interrupt you, but before that became law, people were kind of panic stricken, not knowing how we were going to go about life without using our plastic bags. But, we transitioned pretty well. As a matter of fact, during COVID, having to go back to that was just an uncomfortable feeling for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We really did adjust well, and it saved, the environment billions of bags, I can only imagine.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, Dan, because I think we were all surprised, myself included. Did I know that we were absolutely capable of this? Yes, I did, but did I know that we would transition so swiftly and easily, way before was necessary to do so.
Right.
I never would have guessed that within weeks of passing this law, literally weeks of passing this law, you were hard pressed to find people with a plastic bag. So that's been a joy to see because, quite frankly, I want to see us doing all we can in waste mitigation efforts, in stalling the impacts of climate change, and these are the ways we get there. Single-use plastics are just such a detriment to our environment. And so I used to drive to work, and I remember as we were negotiating this piece of legislation, I used to count the plastic bags that I would see on my way to work, up in the trees, floating on the highways, on the side of the road. And I don't see them like I used to. In fact, I do these cleanups every year in the Farm River in Brantford, and I just wasn't seeing last year's cleanup versus this year's cleanup so different in terms of those single-use plastic bags. We were finding a lot more in the water, in the reeds, sort of tanked up. And you just don't see them as much anymore. And it's just a testament to what seemingly small change can have such a huge impact. So
next challenge for you is water bottles.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yes. Bring your own water bottles.
Really?
Fill them up out of the tap. Yeah.
So you're able to do that successfully, and we'll get back to that. Well, we have gone back to that recently, actually.
Yeah.
Reusable bags. What else?
So we had a ban on fracking waste, which is always a good thing, just detrimental to our environment. The other really exciting news out of the Environment Committee in 2019 was that we passed a brand new cash crop, and that is hemp. Which is a multi-million-dollar industry, great for the state of Connecticut, terrific for our agricultural community, really takes us back to our agricultural roots. Some of these farmers were looking to diversify. Some are brand new farmers. We're looking to get more young farmers interested in farming various crops. And so this really fit the bill. We actually just went back in special session and did some tweaks to that bill so that it would align with federal regulations out of the USDA. But currently we have over 100 licenses out for hemp and, over 500 acres in the state of Connecticut already. And that is just a year. So it's really exciting to see, that when we can create new business opportunities for folks and in our district. And I think, people are really taking advantage of that, which is great.
Right. Yeah. Would you like to speak to insulin caps? I know that was something the legislature was dealing with, and my daughter is type 1 diabetic, so that means a lot to us.
Exactly. I mean, the rising costs of, drugs in general, insulin, because so many Americans, so many people in Connecticut rely on insulin, rely on diabetes medication and supplies. So we were able to put a cap of $25 on the price of insulin, which was the most aggressive bill that had passed in the country for an insulin cap. So that was really exciting. Another thing that we did during the special session as well, that was in July, and this also was in July, was the expansion of telehealth coverage. Something that, as you mentioned, what are the differences in COVID? Well, more people are having telehealth visits now than ever before. And this really is a way of getting our most vulnerable population, to check in with their physicians on a regular basis, making sure that that is covered financially for them. It also helps our low-income folks who traditionally might let longer periods of time go in between visits just because of their work schedule, many working
or transportation issues, it alleviates a lot of that.
Yeah, so many things. So that was a really huge win in terms of healthcare. So I think what you'll see too, I introduced in 2019, we talked a little bit about how a small business owner. One of the things I hear over and over again from small businesses is the cost of insurance, health insurance. I myself, prior to becoming a state legislator, I was paying, close to $1,600 a month in premiums for my family with a $16,000 deductible. So if you do the math,
why have insurance at that point? Unless you get hit by a bus, it doesn't do no good.
Crazy, right, Dan? I mean, $35,000 before you're ever seeing any kind of Yeah, but what I dug into and what I found is that this is not unusual. And so folks are either going without insurance altogether, or they're paying those monthly premiums and avoiding doctor's visits because they don't want to have to pay the out-of-pocket cost, because certainly they haven't met their deductible. It's a real problem. And so I introduced a bill in 2019 to create a public option in the state of Connecticut. We got that really pretty far into negotiations with the insurance committee. And in 2020, it was reintroduced as the Connecticut plan, working in conjunction with the comptroller's office, Kevin Lembo, a comptroller of the state of Connecticut. Again, making great strides there. It hasn't quite made it over the finish line. I think we had a good chance of doing that had the session not been abbreviated, but I think you can look to see something like that come back again in 2021.
I never quite understood in our country why healthcare should be tied to your work.
Right.
I mean, we're all humans, right?
Yeah.
And you need healthcare you're born in a hospital.
Right.
So, that's
Yeah.
a big question. And we did make some progress a couple of years ago. Now, not so much. Let's see what happens, right?
Yeah. I think we can get there. And I think, if we can't get there on a federal level, we can certainly make some changes on a state level to make healthcare more affordable for folks.
Right.
Yeah.
What is Take Back Our Grid Act?
Oh, yeah. Well, this was.
I did my due diligence, just saying.
Yes. Well, that's a great question, Dan, because as you'll recall, Tropical Storm Isaias hit Connecticut very hard across the entire state, and we saw widespread power outages. What we didn't see was the recovery after those power outages that we would have liked to have seen. Now, that storm came on the heels of a substantial rate increase from Eversource in particular. Take Back Our Grid Act is aimed at all utilities in the state of Connecticut, and I know different folks are on different utility suppliers. In terms of Eversource, this bill was really born out of that response. It was abysmal performance by the company. I know folks in North Branford are by and large on United Illuminating or Wallingford Electric. There are a few Eversource customers, but certainly the rest of my district is all Eversource. And we saw just terrible storm preparedness. We saw, the lack of make safe crews going out that night. The storm passed fairly early in the evening.
Right.
And we knew this storm was coming. In fact, United Illuminating had classified it as a higher level storm than even Eversource had. So they were woefully unprepared. They didn't have the line crews to send out. They didn't have the make safe crews to really assist municipalities and getting folks freed up. And so we saw a lot of folks, trapped in their homes without power for days on end, in some cases in excess of a week. So what this does, and then of course there was subsequently there was another storm that hit Branford, North Branford, some parts of Guilford, and a little bit of Madison as well. Branford got pummeled.
It was incredible.
It was really something. And so in that case, we saw a better storm response. And the reason for that is it was a very isolated incident.
Right, there were very small clusters that were really affected.
Right. And they could send out, just a focused storm team, to work on getting people safe, getting the roads cleared and getting the power restored. But what we did as a legislature was we heard from constituents, gosh, this is terrible. I've lost medication. I have medical needs. I can't get out of my home if there's an emergency. And we just said, this is unacceptable. We need to do something. And so Take Back Our Grid Act was born out of that. And what it will do, we did pass it. It was signed into law by the governor. It will amplify storm preparedness. So
that's the key here, prevention.
Yes, prevention. So there will be minimum staffing levels, line workers post-storm, making sure that the crews are out there. So requiring that of them. There will be, for ratepayers, credits given if there is in excess of 96 hours without power. So a $25 per day credit, compensation of $250 per day for loss, or $250 total rather, for loss of food and medication. Also, if it had been in excess of 96 hours.
Oh, okay.
So it also creates what's known as performance-based regulation. So really holding the utility companies accountable for loss of power that extends on for too many days. It changes liability to hold those power companies responsible, not only power, but other utility companies as well. And if a company sees excessive return, PURA, our Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, can actually they can issue interim rate reductions So that will be huge. Just allowing PURA to step in, impose penalties where penalties are warranted against these companies, and then issue the rate reductions if suddenly we see companies have excess profits on hand. So I think this is a step in the right direction of holding these companies accountable. I mean, we are paying astronomical rates in the state of Connecticut, fourth highest in the country when it comes to electricity rates, and we need to do something about that.
Okay, so we have a couple more minutes, and one of the big parts of legislation that was passed recently was the police accountability bill, and the North Branford Police Union endorsed your opponent. Please speak to that and to how we're going to move forward with that as well, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question, Dan. I think, was I disappointed that they endorsed my opponent? I was, certainly.
Not unusual. Like I look back and I didn't see that happening in the past, but
it is unusual. And, I think this is about, the police unions being upset, feeling unheard. And that is unfortunate. I will say this is a situation, the police accountability bill was born out of an enormous public outcry to see police accountability. We all remember, it was not long ago, the social justice movement. It's still very much here, and legislators across the state were hearing from their constituents, in this public outcry, and folks just enraged about what was going on across the country. I think police, I have the utmost respect for our law enforcement officers. I have always, my policies in the past, and you can clearly see my voting record when it comes to, our law enforcement officials. I have, voted for pay increases, voted for extended benefits. I worked with Representative Candelora to get a reimbursement on body-worn cameras for our North Branford Police. I actually just requested with Representative Candelora some steep funding to expand the North Branford Police Department. We passed an extensive PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, piece of legislation in 2019 that allows officers workman's comp, which is huge for them in situations of PTSD. My point being that, I am on the side of public safety. I am on the side of our law enforcement who put themselves on the line each and every day. I worked really hard on that bill, listened to both sides. I sat down with many in the law enforcement community, police chiefs from the departments in the district, as well as some union presidents, not North Branford in particular, but others in the district. And, that bill originally had a full removal of qualified immunity for our officers. I, along with a couple of my colleagues, were not willing to vote on that bill because of conversations that I had with law enforcement officials. I think we got the bill to a better place. We pushed out some of the dates and some of the concerning pieces, that we were hearing were concerning pieces within the bill. And, I just hope that everybody can come to the table as we look to refine that legislation in the future. I do pride myself on my ability to listen to all sides, and I hope that we can all, all stakeholders will be at the table as we move forward. I will say for myself, regardless of who is endorsed by whom, I represent everybody. Like I said, I hold our law enforcement in very high regard, and I will continue to work with them regardless as we move forward for the betterment of our community.
Okay, well, I'm going to get yelled at by our guys, but thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for joining me for another episode of I Want to Know, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.